Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Feazell, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge Television, Radio, and Podcast Talk Show. Thank you so much for watching Everyday Being on Monday through Friday, and that is 2 p.m. on the Eastern Time Zone. You can find us many different ways. You can find us in the Huntsville, Alabama area now, channel 182 on Charter Communications. You can also find us on Abundance Television, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And don't forget the podcast on thenewscasters.com. We've got another avenue coming up for you pretty soon, too. Can't wait to tell you about that one. On the radio, the biggest country station in South Carolina, WZLA. We're proud to be part of that team as well. I have my friend Alan Mendenhall with me right now. Alan, I wanted to show you a mug, okay? This is a coffee mug I had 21 years ago when the show actually started. This is the only one that I have saved. It doesn't have a crack or something on it. So as soon as the show is finished, it's going back into the china cabinet. But I wanted to get it.
Wow. Well, what does it say? I can't read it from here. My eyes aren't good enough.
It says The Edge, the show for women, by women, and about women.
All right. Wow. You've had that mug for how long?
21 years, 21 and a half years. That's
well, it's old enough to drink.
Yeah. But we're so proud to be. And the success of the show is awesome guests. And Alan Mendenhall has been one of our guests for a number of years. I don't even remember when you started.
It's over a decade.
It's been a long time, but what you're bringing to the show is powerful. And so in politics, we talk about everything, money, politics, whatever. But what's going on right now is your runoff situations. Let's go ahead and start talking about the runoff in Alabama.
Yeah, well, I'll just basically ignore all the Democratic Party runoffs because they're mostly irrelevant to the conversation since Alabama's a one-party state and we're really talking about the big constitutional offices. So I'll start with the U.S. Senate seat, which the runoff is now between Barry Moore and Jared Hudson. And I've got some figures here. I wrote these down this morning. Hudson is actually up in a Remington research poll, 41% over Moore at 40% with 19% undecided. Talk about really close. Under the Alabama poll, Hudson is up 49% over Moore at 39% with 12% undecided. But it does seem as if most polls actually have Barry Moore up with a slight edge. So I can't tell you what's going to happen in this runoff. It will be really interesting. It's going to be close. It will involve turnout, and turnout was really low in the primary. So in the runoffs, I suspect it may be even lower.
Well,
that's the big one.
So about Jared, because I interviewed him, and I like to tell you, I was impressed with him because he was like this outsider coming in, ex-military, but it's the way he presented himself. Now, I like Barry Moore too. I'm glad I'm not in Alabama right now. I would not want to have to between those two. But I will say, Jared has come from absolutely nothing and has done a lot. I think a lot of people were surprised that he would be in a runoff.
Yeah, I think he ran for like sheriff and lost that race. And to go from running for sheriff to running for the United States Senate is a big leap. And to make it to a runoff is really impressive. It shows a savviness for politics that will serve him well, regardless of what happens in this race. It shows he's got a political future somewhere, and he'll be somebody to watch regardless. I think
it's his confidence. Because confidence he's showing, it's not an exaggerated, obnoxious confidence. It's a confidence in the way he presents himself is I've got a duty. I had it in the military. Now I've got it. I want to be in the election. I want to be one of those people who makes a difference in Alabama. That's what I saw. You know, women see stuff that men don't see. But that's what I saw when I interviewed him. I like that.
Yeah, I think he's an impressive guy. He really is. And as I say, he has some kind of future, even if it's not United States Senator, which he very well may be. I just read the Remington poll and the Alabama poll, and they show him, they show him in the lead. So we'll see. In 1 week, a lot can change. As we know now in the age of the 24-hour news cycle, a week is like a year. Yeah. So who knows what can happen in the next few days before people actually show up. I saw your buddy John Merrill voting absentee yesterday, getting his absentee ballot and submitting that. So that's very good. I know a lot of people will want to do that if they haven't already. I think that the time may be out by now to do that. But at any rate, we'll see. We'll see how turnout goes. We'll see what happens in that race in particular. That's the one that most people around the country are paying attention to because of its national implications. And everyone wants to know who's going to succeed Tommy Tuberville, who was a great senator. But the other big races are the race for lieutenant governor. So the runoff, we have Wes Allen and John Wall. The Alabama poll, which I mentioned earlier, has Wes Allen at 41.9%, John Wall at 38.4%. Whatever is the difference is just the undecided. I can't really predict that one either, but I know John Wall has President Trump's endorsement, but I sort of feel as if Wes Allen is going to pull this one off. It just seems as if he's up in the polls and has been up in the polls. And so I think he'll probably pull it off. The attorney general race has been very contentious, and it's between two close friends of mine, so a little bit awkward for me personally. But Catherine Robertson is up in the Alabama poll, 49.1% to Jay Mitchell's 31.2%. And of course, if there's a difference, it's all the undecideds. That's a pretty substantial lead. But again, that's just one poll. And they were running neck and neck in the primary itself. Catherine ended up getting more votes than Jay did, but you just never know all these different factors that play into the runoff where that will end up. Let's see. Those are the three. Those are the three that I'm really paying attention to. You know, we've got Public Service Commission and things like that, but those are the three big ones. They're the big offices, 2 constitutional officers and then a United States Senate.
Well, let me ask you a question, because I know a lot of emphasis is put, unless if you're a Republican, you're going to put a lot of emphasis out there to your Republican voters. Same with Democrats, they're going to choose their people. But how much do you think they need to focus on the undecided?
A lot of time, because that's really where, you know, if you're doing these polls, obviously if somebody is going to take the time to commit to one or the other, they're pretty committed, I would imagine. And the undecideds are the ones that you have to swing. And it's tough in Alabama because our polling quality is limited and it's hard to read what, you know, these undecided voters are looking for. We've had a lot of commercials that have gone negative, and in Alabama, people always talk about how they don't like that, but sometimes they end up being effective. Whether people like it or not, they end up being effective. So, you know, the particularly negative campaigns or negative races are the lieutenant governor and attorney general races. And I think, you know, they could go either way. Once both candidates go negative, then it kind of neutralizes, you know, it offsets. So it's not as if people can say, well, I'm going to vote for the positive candidate when both candidates have chosen to go after each other in that way. So we'll see. I mean, who knows? I think regardless, in each one of those instances, Alabama is going to end up with a good person in office. So that is a positive. That's one thing we can be happy about.
Let's talk ads for a minute, because I was talking with one of my sponsors one day, and he said, you know what? Negative ads can be good ads. And I said, what? That's my gig. You know, I put positive ads together. But anyway, he said, because all you're doing is getting the name out there. And he said, when it comes into elections, he said, sometimes people don't even remember what was said bad because they're both bashing each other anyway. It's really the one who's going to get the most attention. And sometimes when people go to the polls, they haven't done their due research. And they just, well, I remember hearing a lot about John Smith. And so they're just going ahead and do John Smith, whether it's a good ad or a bad ad.
Yeah, name recognition is huge in politics. And a lot of people who want to get into politics choose to run for a seat just to get the name out there, because the person knows I'm not going to win this particular race. Great if I do, but the point is to get my name out there so that the next time I run, I'm a recognizable figure. And that happens all the time in politics. And, you know, I mean, Jared Hudson's name was out there for running for sheriff. Now it's out there in a really big way, making it to a runoff for a U.S. Senate seat. That's huge.
Well, you have to think about Abraham Lincoln back years and years ago, decades ago, centuries ago, and how, I mean, how many times did he run for office? He was considered the loser. I mean, he was, and he made a swing at it and he won.
Yeah. Yeah. Politics is interesting because sometimes the candidate doesn't have to change so much as just wait for the right moment. I mean, think about President Trump. He ran in 2016 and surprised everyone, but that run would not have worked in the Romney-Ryan era. And his time came. I mean, he ran on a platform that is comparable to, say, Pat Buchanan's. And Pat Buchanan was never, I mean, he wasn't a marginal figure, but he was never going to win. And President Trump carried those views forward in an era when he could win. So I think President Trump's latest victory was in some respects a vindication of people like Pat Buchanan, who held views that were slightly on the margins of the Republican Party, not necessarily of the United States and politics writ large. They were still within mainstream, but they were definitely on the margins of the mainstream. And things have shifted.
Well, there are two presidents who were elected, I think, that were kind of shocked within their own self. I think Barack Obama was surprised he won. He kind of had that, "Ooh, I won," kind of a thing, going on. And President Trump was the same way. It was almost a shock that he won. But I think also because a lot of negativity was something, so maybe my sponsor knew what he was talking about. A lot of negativity. I don't think I've ever heard of such negative remarks that have been made about any one person ever than President Trump. But it served him.
Yeah, and that Barack Obama race, really, John McCain lost it as much as Barack Obama won it. It was a period where McCain had always been sort of hawkish on foreign policy, and people were tired of that after the Iraq War and after 8 years of George W. Bush, and they wanted a change in foreign policy. And John McCain brought not only not a change, but much more the same and an intensified version of sort of the old neoconservatism. And people had grown tired of that foreign policy. And then Sarah Palin ended up being somewhat of an unserious vice presidential candidate. I think at the time she struck me as a great choice, but then I think she and McCain clashed and they didn't get along that well. And she sort of rose to stardom and outshined him some. And so, it just didn't work too well. They didn't create a dynamic together very well. And so Barack Obama became president. And then,
did they? I mean, because she took the attention away from him. I mean, she did. She could have been on the presidential ticket instead of him. And I think he just got jealous.
Yeah, I think so. And he was, he wasn't very fluid. He was cagey and stiff, and he wasn't the easiest guy to like. When he was younger in his political career, people loved him when he was the maverick of the Senate, and he could, he was your swing voter. He was your Joe Manchin before Joe Manchin, and people had to court his approval and try to get his vote. And he was at least very interesting in those days. But then, he became much more of a sort of cagey guy in a suit that, just any kind of cookie cutter politician at about that time, 2008. And that didn't serve him very well. And then, of course, he became a foe of Donald Trump and didn't read the tea leaves, hadn't seen the shift in the voting populace and the views, and just kind of sadly spent the remaining years of his political life on the wane.
I think, too, to add to that, that was the beginning of we're tired of, we need term limits, because he had been in office a very long time. Here comes Barack Obama. He's fresh, he's new, and maybe there would be some kind of a change. Of course, he actually spilled it out what he was going to do, and he did exactly what he said he was going to do. But I think
there was change.
It was change, all right. Absolutely. Can you believe half the show is over? Let's go into a commercial break. We're going to be right back in just a few minutes. Everybody hang in there. we're back. My name is Donna, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge television, radio, and podcast talk show. Thank you so much for watching every day, Monday through Friday, beginning at 2 p.m. on the Eastern time zones. I get to ride home with you in the afternoon. I've got my friend Alan Mendenhall with me. Man, time flies when you're on the show, Alan.
It really does.
It does. But we were talking a little bit about races, runing for office and that kind of thing. And so we've had a few little surprises going on here. And I wanted to talk to you about advertising. Okay, now that's my gig. So I want you to advertise with me. I'll do it the right way. But I wanted to mention this. And this is, and let's go back to John McCain again and President Obama. So if you'll notice, the ads that were running against McCain, they were showing him as a shadowy figure. Now, this is back before AI came in. But if you'll remember that, every single ad, it just throw this like, oh, he's a shadowy kind of a figure to the average American walking around, And so AI had some really interesting things going on, too. I won't mention the candidates, but I will say this. In the Senate race, there was one guy who was running against Lindsey Graham. And so this was the commercial. The guy had made some mistakes. He got into drugs when he was younger, but he was younger. Okay. A lot of young folks have made stupid mistakes. And so the commercials they were running, the opponent was running, was as if he were still into drugs. They were showing shadowy pictures of this guy as if, oh, he's still in drugs. He's still doing all this, and also actually wanted to make it sound as if he were a pedophile. But it's the way they worded it, to make it sound as if, well, needless to say, the guy lost the race. And I think that he could have been a great contender. But that was a case where using AI didn't work. And then another one, a lady running for governor in South Carolina, they were showing her buddying up, and you could see it was AI. You and I are in the business, so you and I can detect these things, Alan. So it was evident to me this was AI. This was not this lady with AOC. They're not buddies. And then they were acting as if she was just all for, men wearing women's clothes and all this kind of stuff. But it was AI. So people have to really get out there and do some research and not pay that much attention to commercials.
Yeah, and I have seen negative advertising backfire and the negative ads. One example is when Twinkle Kavanaugh and Will Ainsworth were running against each other for the lieutenant governor's seat. And Twinkle Kavanaugh brought back an arrest of Will Ainsworth from when he was in a fraternity in college, and he had stolen something. I can't even remember, some kind of thing. It was like a fraternity prank, the way fraternity brothers take something. And she had tried to run with that, and it ended up backfiring because I think a lot of people said, well, when I was in a fraternity in college, I did dumb stuff. And and it didn't seem like he was stealing it to sell it or stealing it to, deprive someone of their property. They were doing it as a fraternity prank, and it was a type of thing that the fraternity had done for years. And so it didn't play well. That type of negative attack didn't play very well with the populace, or at least it was minimally effective at any rate.
Well, I tell you what, the master of it all is President Trump. When he was arrested, what did he do? He turned it around, and it shows him T-shirts were made about this. So he's arrested, and here he is, with holding the numbers up like I've been arrested. So a lot of people would have caved. I mean, they would have went into a cave and never come back out again. So he got it and was smart enough to turn it around.
Yeah, he is a master marketer. And you remember from the first term when he tweeted out in the middle of the night and had a typo, and it was like "come thief," and then it became a viral phrase, a viral word on the internet, and everyone was trying to wonder, what does "come thief" mean? And he played it up and embraced the typo and really egged people on, and it caught on, and T-shirts were made with the word on it. And he's really a brilliant marketer. He can do things that other people can't do. And when people try to mimic him, it never works. It never works. It looks mimetic, but it also looks inauthentic. And there's only one Donald Trump, there's only one man like that. And his authenticity doesn't translate to other people.
Okay, who else would have had, would have been shot, had the ear shot at, and blood streaming down, and use it in a T-shirt and win the election?
Yeah. I mean, it was an amazing moment. And the other thing about that moment is I think a lot of people, because America is still a very religious country, I think a lot of people saw that moment and thought, well, there's something providential going on. This
Mhm.
man's life was saved for a reason, and
Mhm.
I'm going to go out and vote for him. And, I believe that happened.
Oh, I do too. Let's talk a little bit about national politics and let's talk about the presidential race. Okay, I love Marco Rubio. I think he has really come out of the kinks. He's more confident, and I like some of his decisions, and I like JD Vance too. Who do you see on the ticket this coming time?
That's what everybody's asking. Everybody's asking the question, and I don't know. I think because JD Vance is vice president, it's his to lose. But it would be resolved very quickly if the two of them got together and said, let's figure this out so that we don't have to hash it out publicly. Why don't we come together and decide how we're going to do this? And I don't know whether they will do anything like that, or if that's even a good idea. That's just, I think it would be helpful to both of them to resolve it, because I think it would make succession easier, and it would make their roles presently more clearly defined. But I think Rubio is really impressing a lot of people with his abilities, and he's highly competent, and he has a ton of experience, and people are impressed by that. And all the memes of him taking every single role, you know and joking about him being on the football field, or on the soccer field, or running, whatever it is, a beauty pageant, everything. It's just Rubio in all these different roles. Those memes are meant to be funny, but they really elevate his profile.
Yeah, I think he likes it. I think he's a little leaning towards being a little bit like President Trump on that, because I think there was a time it would have hurt his feelings. Now I think he's embracing it. But I'll tell you what I would do if I were JD, because I really think Marco is the strongest, and I love JD. If I were JD, I would say, you know what? I think you need to be pres. I need to be VP, and you get me ready in 8 years, then I'll be pres. I would do that. I would step aside. Now it's going to depend on how he views things, how JD views, because he could do thinking, no, I need to be the one. That's going to cause internal emotions right there. So I think if he would just do that, I think he would just come out there and say, look, you're the guy right now. I want to help you shine. But you
Yeah.
help me in 8 years.
Yeah, right now, I think all eyes are on the midterms, and the midterms are going to turn largely on the economy. We got new inflation numbers. Inflation is up, unfortunately, because energy costs are up as a result of the Iranian conflict and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. So I think Republicans can expect some losses. I just don't know how many. I've got my fingers crossed. I'm hoping they hold the House and the Senate, and that would be great. But I think they're quite likely going to lose the House.
But then you got your folks like me, boots on the ground, regular walking around America. And here's the way I'm viewing that. I would much rather pay a little higher in gas prices to not be bummed to Bolivian here in the United States. I would rather do that. I would rather make that sacrifice right now. I'm still on the Trump team.
And gas prices did come down 10% in May, and they're lower now than they were, say, in April, which is a good sign. Now, they're still much higher than they were a year ago, much higher than they were in February before the conflict. In Alabama, they're down around $3.70, which is not bad. The national average is somewhere around $4. And so people feel that. And I think the one thing that politicians haven't realized yet is they go on and they grandstand, people like Chuck Schumer, for example, and they say X, Y, and Z, and they try to make a big deal of it. But I don't think people are as moved by what politicians say anymore, because I think most people have picked their camp. And as we were talking about earlier, there's the undecided voter. Well, I still am not sure that the undecideds really even trust the politicians that much. They might trust other people who aren't in politics who might be saying something about gas prices, but there's less and less trust in office holders.
Well, that's why they're undecided, and I think it could lean towards the Republican. I really do.
Well, I hope it does.
I'm going to have to call it a day. What would you like to say before you go? And let's go ahead and talk about your books.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah. Yeah, my latest book was an edition with a guy named Marcus Witcher, and it was on controversies among conservatism. It's an edition that collects a lot of different talks from past Philadelphia Society meetings, and then the one before that was a novel, A Glooming Peace This Morning. But you can find all my books on my website, alanmendenhall.com, and my name's right there on the screen. But for those listening on radio, that's ALLENMENDENHALL.com.
Absolutely. Alan, thank you so much for being on the show. Wow, it flies by. I can't believe this. And thank you guys so much for watching. Continue sending email. It makes my day. Donna at donnasedge.com. Donna at donnasedge.com. We'll see you next time.